My friends, remain centered. Not because life has suddenly become easy, and not because the world has finally decided to give you everything you desire, but because you have discovered something far more powerful than reacting to circumstances. You have realized that your inner state is the true source of your power. Nothing outside of you can control your experience unless you first give it permission to influence you. The moment this understanding becomes real within you, life begins to shift in ways that feel surprising yet completely natural. Most people believe peace comes after everything improves. They wait for the proof, the results, the reassurance, or the perfect moment before they allow themselves to relax. But the deeper truth is that peace is not the reward that comes after change. Peace is the beginning of change. Life begins reorganizing itself when you stop demanding that everything outside of you must become different before you can feel calm. You step into a state of quiet confidence where you no longer chase outcomes with desperation. Instead, you become aligned with them. Being unbothered does not mean becoming cold, careless, or disconnected. It means becoming rooted. It means your peace is no longer controlled by temporary situations. Your reactions are no longer automatic responses created by old fears, past experiences, or unconscious patterns. You begin moving through life from a place of inner stability, trust, and certainty. And when that transformation happens within you, the way you experience everything around you begins to change. Every challenge you face is not created only by the event itself, but by the meaning you attach to it. Two people can experience the same situation, yet one collapses emotionally while the other remains calm and powerful. The difference is not their intelligence, their luck, or their circumstances. The difference is the assumption they carry within themselves. One person believes life controls them, the other understands that their inner world influences the way life responds to them. When you remain unbothered, you are silently declaring that nothing outside of you has the authority to define your future, disturb your inner knowing, or take away your peace. This inner state is not created through words alone. It is expressed through your emotions, your expectations, and the conversations you constantly have within yourself. Life responds to emotional authority, not emotional chaos. The stronger your inner stillness becomes, the easier it becomes for things to move into alignment. Most people spend their days emotionally negotiating with life. They become anxious because they want reassurance. They worry because they want to feel prepared. They react because they believe reacting gives them control. But without realizing it, they reinforce the belief that life is happening to them rather than moving through them. The unbothered person understands a completely different principle. They know that attention directs energy, and that the emotional state they repeatedly return to becomes the foundation of their experience. This does not mean ignoring problems or pretending difficulties are not real. It means choosing the state from which they respond. When something unexpected appears, they do not immediately rush into fear, judgment, or negative assumptions. They pause, they observe, they remain neutral. They refuse to create a painful story before understanding the complete picture. And within that moment of stillness, something powerful begins to unfold. This is where transformation begins. This is where what many people call miracles are created. A miracle is not always something impossible appearing suddenly. Sometimes it is simply the result of a new assumption becoming stronger than an old belief. It happens when you stop demanding evidence before you believe and begin living from the feeling of already knowing. When you remain unbothered, you stop fighting the present moment. You stop pouring emotional energy into circumstances you no longer wish to experience. You begin living from the identity of someone who already feels complete, secure, and worthy. And because your outer world constantly reflects your inner state, reality begins to rearrange itself around that new awareness. Consider how often people delay their own progress through constant emotional resistance. Anxiety keeps them attached to the very thing they want to release. Overthinking keeps them trapped in endless possibilities. Fear keeps them connected to the old story they are trying to leave behind. But calm expectation creates movement. Quiet confidence opens possibilities. Inner peace dissolves resistance. Remaining unbothered is not passive. It is one of the strongest forms of inner discipline. It requires you to trust what you have accepted within yourself more than what your current circumstances are showing you. It requires you to understand that invisible movement is still movement. Seeds grow beneath the surface before anyone sees the flower. Roots strengthen in silence before the tree rises. The greatest transformations often happen long before they become visible to the world. So remain steady. Do not constantly search for signs. Do not obsess over when things will happen. Do not rehearse possible failures in your mind. Choose the assumption of completion. Choose the feeling of already being aligned with what you desire. Many people unknowingly contradict their own intentions because they imagine success, but emotionally react to every delay with frustration. They speak about faith but practice fear. They desire abundance but continue focusing on limitation. The unbothered person chooses another path. They understand that consistency of inner state is more powerful than temporary emotions. They return to peace again and again. They return to trust again and again. They return to certainty even when circumstances appear uncertain. And because they remain faithful to that inner identity, life begins to organize itself around them. People respond differently. Opportunities appear. Situations shift. Problems begin dissolving in unexpected ways. From the outside, it may look like luck, but from the inside, it feels natural because they know the change began within them first. When you stop feeding an old story with fear and reaction, that story loses its power. Your reality is always reflecting your inner conversations. When your mindset changes from, "Why is this happening against me?" to "Everything is unfolding in my favor," you change the direction of your experience. The greatest transformation does not come from controlling the outside world. It comes from mastering the world within you. When you become peaceful within yourself, life begins responding to that peace. When you become unshakable inside, the world around you begins to mirror that strength. The way people respond to you begins to change when you become truly grounded within yourself. Respect grows without you having to demand it. Tension fades without you needing to fight or explain yourself. This transformation does not happen because you force the world to treat you differently. It happens because your inner state silently communicates confidence, stability, and self-respect. Composure carries a powerful energy. Calmness influences people. The world responds more to who you are being than to what you are asking for. Many miracles do not arrive in dramatic forms. They often appear disguised as simple moments in everyday life. A conversation you almost avoided creates a new opportunity. A delay you once disliked protects you from something that was never meant for you. A door that closed redirects you towards something far more aligned. The person who remains unbothered does not see these moments as random events. They recognize them as signs of alignment. Because when desperation disappears, your vision becomes clearer. You begin noticing what was already unfolding in your favor. Being unbothered also means releasing the obsession with controlling exactly how your desires will appear. The desire to control every detail usually comes from fear, while true trust comes from inner certainty. When you trust what you have accepted within yourself, you allow life the freedom to bring your desires through unexpected paths. The greatest surprises often come to those who stop trying to manage every step of the journey. This does not mean becoming passive or refusing to act. It means your actions come from alignment instead of anxiety. You move because you feel guided, not because fear is chasing you. You communicate from confidence rather than reaction. Your decisions become clearer, your timing becomes wiser, and your effort becomes more focused. This is the beautiful paradox. The less you interfere emotionally, the more naturally things begin to unfold. The more settled you become inside, the more smoothly the outside world begins to rearrange itself. Miracles are not random exceptions to life. They are the result of a deeper principle, one that responds to consciousness, belief, and assumption rather than force and struggle. When you remain unbothered, you stop allowing the world to constantly shape your identity. Instead, you begin shaping your experience from within. You no longer live from the question, what if everything goes wrong? You begin living from the certainty that things are already moving towards success. Not through arrogance, not through pretending, but through a quiet confidence that becomes part of who you are. That inner ease becomes a message that life reflects back to you. There will still be moments when the old habit of reacting tries to return. There will be times when your mind wants to analyze everything, when emotions rise, and when uncertainty tries to pull you back into fear. In those moments, you do not need to fight yourself. You simply return to your center. You remember the truth you have chosen. You remind yourself that nothing outside of you can disturb your inner knowing unless you allow it to. Every time you choose peace over reaction, you strengthen that new foundation within yourself. Eventually, being unbothered stops feeling like something you practice and becomes the way you naturally exist. Problems no longer feel like personal attacks. Delays no longer feel like failures. Difficult moments no longer convince you that everything is falling apart. You understand that external circumstances are always changing, but the state you choose within yourself remains yours to command. So choose fulfillment, choose certainty, walk through life knowing you are supported, speak as someone whose voice carries value, make decisions as someone who trusts their own direction. Rest with the awareness that your foundation is secure, and as life mirrors your assumption, it continues to reveal evidence of what you have already accepted within. That is the true miracle. The miracle is not simply that circumstances change. The miracle is that circumstances change because you remained faithful to your inner state. When you remain steady, life begins moving with you instead of against you. When you stay unbothered, reality begins reflecting the quiet strength you carry within. You trust what cannot yet be seen, knowing that what is visible must eventually follow what has already been accepted internally. One day, when you look back, you will realize the turning point was not the moment you worked harder, worried more, or forced things into place. It was the moment you finally became still enough to trust. Even now, as these words reach you, something within you recognizes this truth, not simply as an idea or temporary motivation, but as something deeply familiar. A part of you has always known that peace was never something waiting for you at the end of the journey. Peace was available the moment your awareness became clear enough to claim it. Because when you stop fighting life, life begins to stop feeling like a battle. Many disturbances are not signs that something is wrong. They are opportunities to test the identity you have chosen. They reveal whether you will return to the old version of yourself that doubts, reacts, and resists, or whether you will remain committed to the calm state you have created. Every moment gives you that choice. And each time you choose stillness instead of chaos, you strengthen a new version of yourself. One that remains stable even when circumstances are uncertain. Holding your composure does not mean denying reality. It means deciding that your inner world is the foundation from which you experience reality. It means understanding that the world around you does not define you. Your consciousness defines the way you meet the world. Emotional mastery is not about ignoring feelings or forcing yourself to be positive. It is about choosing what deserves your attention, choosing which thoughts deserve your belief, and choosing which emotions you allow to guide your life. You choose which interpretations deserve your attention, and whatever you repeatedly choose begins to become your natural way of being. Over time, you no longer need to force yourself to remain calm, because calmness becomes part of your identity. Composure is no longer something you practice only during difficult moments. It becomes the foundation from which you move through life. When peace becomes who you are, urgency loses its control over you. Fear may still appear, but it no longer takes over your entire being. It becomes a temporary visitor that arrives and eventually leaves. Impatience begins to disappear because you are no longer living from the feeling of lacking what you desire. Instead, you begin existing from the inner awareness that what you seek is already accepted within you, and the outside world is simply adjusting to reflect that inner state. Notice how differently life begins to unfold when you stop observing everything through worry, when you stop constantly searching for evidence, checking for signs, and measuring progress every moment. You create space for things to naturally move. In that space, changes often happen faster than expected. People become more open, situations become easier, new possibilities appear, not because you forced them into existence, but because you stopped creating resistance against them. The unbothered state carries a quiet assumption of certainty. It is the inner knowing that says, this is already moving. I do not need constant proof to trust it. And the power of that certainty comes from its calmness. It does not chase. It does not beg. It does not hold on tightly. It simply rests in confidence. Struggle creates tension, but relaxation allows movement. This is why forced positivity often feels empty, while genuine conviction creates change. Life does not respond to words spoken while your heart is filled with doubt. It responds to the deeper feeling of trust that exists beneath the words. When you are truly unbothered, there is no longer a battle happening within you. And when the inner battle disappears, the outer resistance begins to weaken as well. There will still be moments when circumstances appear to challenge your belief. There will be times when reality seems to show the opposite of what you have accepted internally. The old version of you may have immediately panicked, searched for explanations, or fallen back into fear. But now you understand something different. Contradiction is not failure, it is part of the transition. Before a new reality fully appears, life often has to rearrange old patterns, and that process can look uncertain before it becomes beautiful. So you remain steady. You understand that the journey between where you are and where you want to be may not always feel comfortable, but it is still carrying you forward. You do not need to understand every detail. You only need to remain faithful to the state you have chosen. Being unbothered means you stop allowing appearances to control your emotions. You stop seeing delays as rejection. You stop seeing silence as proof that something is wrong. You understand that life does not need your constant worry or emotional supervision in order to work. Sometimes the greatest movement happens when you stop interfering and allow things to unfold naturally. You allow people to reveal who they are without absorbing their energy. You allow situations to develop without creating endless stories about what every moment means. You allow time to pass without turning it into an enemy. This kind of allowance is not weakness. It is the strength of someone who knows that what is truly meant for them cannot miss them. When you embody that level of trust, you stop chasing outcomes and begin attracting confirmations. Small shifts start appearing. A problem resolves without you forcing it. A conversation goes better than expected. An opportunity appears from a direction you never considered. These moments are not meaningless accidents. They are reflections of the inner certainty you have continued to maintain. And the more you recognize them, the more naturally they begin to flow into your experience. You begin to understand that miracles were never as rare as you once believed. Often the problem was not the absence of blessings, but the inability to recognize them while living in constant tension. A restless mind misses what a peaceful mind can see. Fear closes doors that trust allows to open. Emotional reactions create noise that hides the quiet movements already happening. But when you become unbothered, you clear the path. You no longer feel the need to prove your value to life. You no longer chase validation or desperately try to convince yourself that everything will work out. You simply stand in the quiet confidence that everything is unfolding exactly as it should. You stop merely hoping that things will work out, and you begin living from the quiet assumption that they already are. That assumption, existing beneath your thoughts and actions, becomes the invisible foundation shaping your entire experience. This is how an inner state becomes a future reality, not through endless struggle, constant effort, or forcing circumstances to obey, but through the emotional state you consistently carry. You maintain that state even when no one is watching, especially in those private moments, because what you experience internally in silence eventually reveals itself in your outer world. When your private world is peaceful, your external life begins to move with greater harmony. So you continue choosing composure, choosing trust, choosing inner stillness instead of mental chaos, not as a temporary exercise, but as a way of existing. And life, always responding to the state you embody, continues to reflect that inner shift back to you. As this way of being becomes deeper within you, something powerful begins to happen. Your inner world no longer rises and falls based on every external event. You still experience emotions, but emotions no longer control your identity. Thoughts still appear, but you no longer accept every thought as truth. Situations still happen, but you no longer immediately label them as either a victory or a disaster. The space between what happens and how you respond becomes your greatest source of freedom. In that space, true choice is created. You choose not to fall apart when answers take longer than expected. You choose not to explain yourself when your silence already carries meaning. You choose not to prove your worth because you already understand it. These choices may seem small, but they completely transform the way you experience life. Because reality does not simply respond to events, it responds to the meaning you give those events. When you remain unbothered, you are silently communicating, I trust this process because I trust myself. And trust has a powerful effect. It removes resistance, it creates alignment, it allows things to organize themselves without your constant interference. You begin realizing that progress can happen even when you are resting, that solutions can develop while you are not searching for them, that what belongs to you can move toward you without being controlled every second. This understanding creates a different kind of peace. Not the peace of someone who does not care, but the peace of someone who knows. You stop imagining worst-case scenarios. You stop mentally experiencing pain before anything has even happened. You recognize that your imagination is powerful, and instead of using it to create fear, you use it to create certainty. You imagine from the perspective of fulfillment rather than absence, from stability rather than insecurity, from confidence rather than desperation. Because your imagination acts as a blueprint, life begins reflecting the patterns you repeatedly return to internally. Being unbothered also changes the way you connect with others. You no longer need constant approval, attention, or reassurance from people to feel secure within yourself. You stop depending on external reactions to confirm your value. You listen more carefully. You speak with greater intention. Your words become powerful not because they are louder, but because they come from a calm and centered place. People sense this energy even if they cannot explain it. Conversations become smoother. Conflicts lose their power before they fully develop. Even when others are overwhelmed by emotion, your stability remains untouched. And this stability becomes a form of quiet leadership. True influence does not come from controlling others. It comes from mastering yourself. Remaining unbothered is not something you do only when life is easy. It becomes a way of living. In the beginning, you may notice yourself reacting and then gently bringing yourself back to peace. But with time, the distance between reaction and awareness grows. Awareness becomes stronger than impulse. And when awareness leads, miracles no longer feel impossible or shocking. They begin to feel natural. You trust timing instead of fighting it. You stop forcing answers. You stop pushing against doors that are not meant to open through pressure. When something does not move, you no longer assume it is rejection. You recognize it may be redirection, preparation, or protection from something that does not match where you are going. Because you are no longer emotionally disturbed, you can see situations clearly. You stop confusing urgency with importance. You stop mistaking noise for progress. You understand that the biggest transformations often begin quietly within before they become visible outside. So you continue living your life fully. You handle your responsibilities. You connect with others. You participate in the world. But you do it from a different foundation, a calmer one, a stronger one. You remain present without becoming consumed. You care without becoming attached. You act without being controlled by fear. And life begins responding to this balance. What you desire often appears when you stop desperately searching for it. Answers arrive when you stop repeating the same question from a place of anxiety. A person reaches out when you finally release the need for their attention. Situations resolve in ways you never could have planned. Not because you forced harder, but because you stopped creating resistance. The unbothered state removes the barriers created by fear and attachment. And when resistance disappears, movement becomes natural. Many obstacles you once believed were outside forces were actually reflections of the tension you carried within. Now that this inner pressure has softened, the path ahead begins to feel less like a battle and more like a natural unfolding. You wake up with a quieter mind. You move through your day without constantly analyzing every detail. At night, you rest without replaying old conversations or fearing what tomorrow may bring. Your entire system begins learning that uncertainty is not an emergency. From this settled state, true creation becomes possible. You are no longer trying to force miracles into existence. You are allowing them to arrive. You are no longer searching endlessly for signs. You recognize alignment when it appears. You are no longer questioning every step. You simply move with trust. And as this state becomes familiar, you begin to realize how much energy was previously lost through resistance. The exhaustion was not always caused by doing too much. Often, it came from fighting reality, fearing possibilities, and carrying the weight of the past. When you release that inner struggle, your energy returns. Your focus becomes sharper. Your presence becomes stronger. People feel the difference when you enter a room. Decisions become easier because you stop forcing certainty and begin allowing clarity to emerge naturally. When something is not meant for you, you no longer collapse. When something is aligned with you, you no longer panic. A deep understanding settles within you. Nothing valuable requires desperation, and nothing truly meant for you requires endless chasing. This certainty changes the way you relate to time, because you no longer see waiting as a punishment. You begin seeing it as part of the unfolding.